Hey everybody, Irene Pasternak here teaching Feldenkrais with Northwest Parkinson's. We've just returned from a breakout group where people have talked about what's one thing or dream that you've been putting off that you'd like to do. And so if you're joining us online, please stop for a moment before we get started and think about that. And today's lesson is we're going to work with shoulders. And I want to hear what some of your physical challenges are with shoulders. Okay, so Barbara, unmute yourself.
Simply keeping them back.
Okay. And what I'd like to do, as people mention something that's a challenge with the shoulder, try it in your body. See, what's it like for you to push your shoulders back? Is that something that takes a lot of conscious effort, or do they naturally, like, where do they naturally stay for you? Okay.
Right where they're at.
Oops, I can't hear you, Keith.
Okay, lifting my shoulder up and reaching things high.
Okay, so lifting a shoulder and reaching things high. Go ahead and just try that. And which arm did you reach with?
My right.
Okay, try the other arm too. And as you reach with this arm, how much of your body knows you're reaching?
Basically all the side.
Okay, and it'll be different for each of us. And I see a few grimaces on people's faces. Do you reach past what's comfortable when you have to? Do you push? See where the where can you go comfortably as you reach? Try it with the other arm. Is it easier to reach something that's in front of you or something that's behind you?
In front.
Okay. Good. Thanks, Keith. All right. Sharon.
I can't get my arms behind my head without assistance, or, you know, brushing the back of my hair is a challenge with either arm.
Okay. So let's all give our hair a little bit of a brush if we have hair. Just see what it's like. And so just notice, again, staying within the realm of comfort in the lesson. The point of what we're doing is to find easy ways to do things. And so if you put yourself to do it the hard way, all you do is get good at doing it the hard way. And I mean, I suppose that's necessary to some extent. If it's hard to do the motion and you really have to do it, you might push through it. But let's not in this class. Try your other hand if you haven't. What's that like to go back? And how much of your body knows you're trying to do this or doing this? Do your sit bones know that you're trying to brush your hair? Does your chest push out or pull in when you go to brush your hair? Okay. Al, you had something. What's challenging with your shoulder?
I was going to say something else.
Okay, say something else.
I was going to say my oldest sister's name was Irene.
Ah.
That's what I was going to say. No, my shoulders are fine.
Okay. Irene means goddess of, the name is derived from the goddess of peace in Greek. So that was a cool thing about my name. And my last name means parsnip in Russian. So I had friends who called me Peaceful Parsnips. That was my nickname.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But my sister was 13 years older than I am, so.
Yeah, I think it was a more common name at that time than it is now.
But you're a very kind person.
Thank you.
I remember that.
And she was, yeah.
Yeah, she was.
Colleen.
Nice, soft voice, just like yours.
Yeah, I agree with I find it hard to clip my toenails without the pedicure places being open during the pandemic. I realized how dependent I've become on going in to have my toenails done.
I see some heads nodding with that one. Is that a shoulder issue, you think, or?
I have no idea. It just seems like a big deal now. It's just kind of a combination of, you contort to get down there to your toes and get around to the side of the nails, and I have to kind of prop them up on a wastebasket in a drawer and do it when I'm limber.
I like that. I think it might be a good topic for a whole session on getting to our feet to do whatever we need to do with our feet. And for some people, putting on socks and shoes gets difficult, and for some, toenails and even rubbing lotion on your feet or whatever. So I'm putting that one on my next. Although, if you want to try it now and then you'll see how it is at the end of the lesson, go ahead and just imagine that you wanted to clip your toenails.
Yeah.
If the first thing you do is walk outside and go to your car, well, don't do that. Like to reach, because it can be hips, it can be knees, it can be ankles, it can be shoulders, it can be chest. Lots of things can get in the way of that motion. Okay. Any other challenges with the shoulders?
I list to one side. From right to left.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's from sitting at the computer with using a mouse all the time or what, but my right side is higher than my left side.
And does that get in your way of functional movements that you're trying to do?
I notice, especially when I'm in this class, I look at myself and I see my neck bowed over and my shoulder dipped, and I can feel the stiffness in it.
Yeah, it's interesting sometimes that what we don't see, we don't sense. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to work with you all on with the Feldenkrais, is that increasing your felt sense, because when you're in your daily life and you feel a felt sense of, I've got my head over to the side, or I'm cattywampus in some kind of way, then you can do the little experiments to go, how can I get myself more upright? And use every Zoom meeting you're in as this wonderful feedback tool of like, I wonder what I could do. I know I often sit with my head like this, and then, I get a backache, and then I go, all right, let me play with it. Yeah, Carol.
I have trouble getting my arm through a sleeve and getting my shoulder up to do that, or putting my arm through a backpack.
All right, let's all pretend we're putting on a coat for a moment. And you put one arm through, and then the other one, you kind of have to squeeze your arm up by your shoulder, and then it somehow has to lengthen without your elbow getting caught in there. Let's kind of see what that feels like. And do you ever put your coat on the upside down way? Or you put your arms in and then kind of throw it up over your head? That's another good one for a different lesson than today. And just making some notes. All right. Now, let's do one other just exploration before we start. When you hear the word shoulder, what are some quotes you hear people say about shoulder, or some phrases that go with shoulder?
Range of motion.
Hunched.
Okay.
Shoulder,
Hunched. Range of motion.
Frozen.
Frozen.
Hunched.
So
Hunched.
a hunched shoulder. It's interesting. The first set of words are all problems with the shoulder that are.
Shoulder a burden too.
Say it again.
You shoulder a burden.
Shouldering a burden. Yeah.
Put your shoulder to it, indicating you're pushing extra hard or something.
Uh-huh.
Underneath the system.
Put your shoulder to it. Or put your shoulder to the wheel.
Yeah.
What else? Cold shoulder.
Shoulder to shoulder.
Giving somebody the cold shoulder.
Oh,
Shoulder to shoulder.
Shoulder to shoulder. Uh-huh.
Shouldering the weight of the world on one's shoulder.
Shouldering the weight of the world. Okay.
Saying somebody has broad shoulders, or what's the thing? Big shoulders.
Big shoulders. They can bear a big burden. Sharon?
Shouldering your way through like a crowd.
Oh, shouldering your way through a crowd. Uh-huh. Okay. How about someone having a nice soft shoulder to cry on, or to lean on? Anybody have a parent who used to tell them shoulders back, chin high? Yeah. Or a big relief off my shoulders.
The burden off the shoulders.
Yeah. Anybody have an angel on their shoulder? Or I was reading about shoulders this morning, and there was an interesting article in Psychology Today about when somebody lies, they raise a shoulder a little bit, and it's the kind of lie, not like a deliberate, like, but if you're at the doctor's office and the doctor says you're going to take your medicine every day, and you go yes, shoulder a little bit, it probably means your yes is not a firm yes. And or your boss says, will you get this done by Tuesday? Or even worse, if your spouse says, will you get this done by Tuesday? And you go, sure. But if you don't really mean it, there's sometimes a tell in the shoulders. So poker players use them. All right. So when you think of your shoulder, and where is it in your mind? Like, put your finger where you think your right shoulder is. And we'll all point to some slightly different places, because we've played in other lessons with the shoulder being the combination of the collarbone, which connects at the top of the sternum, the shoulder blade, and then the upper arm bone. Those three bones combine to form the shoulder joint, which is somewhere kind of deep inside in there. But we all have a mental image of where the shoulder is. And it's kind of fun to think about where your image is for some of these different phrases. And so we're going to go ahead and put our body into some of these positions. So put your shoulders in a hunched shoulder. And what part of your shoulders are you most aware of when you're hunched? And how is the fabric across the front of yourself and the back of yourself? Which feels stretched further when your shoulders are hunched? Now, when you think of range of motion, the phrase range of motion, where does your attention go in your shoulder? Do you do something to shift where it is?
Extend your.
Yeah. I just, for these, we don't need to say it out loud, it's just the playing with the idea. If you're shouldering a burden, if you've got just something really heavy to deal with, imagine that. I'm imagining when last year I had to clean out the house of some family member who passed away, and there were 7 tons of stuff there, and just shouldering that job was like where I feel it. Okay, now put your shoulder in it, like really give it your all to put your shoulder into getting something done. Do you move on your sit bones? Do you come a little forward or backward? How about if you want to shoulder your way through the crowd? How do you get through the crowd? You kind of turn your shoulder.
Rotate at the hip.
Yeah, And does that feel the same thing as giving somebody a cold shoulder? Or what do you do if you're giving somebody a cold shoulder? Is it your shoulder that does something, or your eyeballs?
That sounds social.
Yeah. How about if you don't know something and you shrug your shoulders? What shrugs? Where, if you visualize something attached to you somewhere, where does the string pull up in order to shrug your shoulders? Okay. And how about if you're looking over your shoulder because something might be dangerous?
Peripheral vision. Neck.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and you move your head, your weight shifts on your bottom a little.
Neck moves.
How about if there's you just took a big burden off your shoulders? You finished that project, whatever. What does it feel like when you take it off? What does your body do?
It's relief.
And what if someone gently puts their hand on your shoulder? What happens in your body? You know, someone you love, COVID time is over. They can come close enough to touch and there's just a gentle hand. Or if somebody snuggles up into your shoulder, how does your body receive that weight of somebody's head? Okay. Anybody notice changes in their jaw or their breathing in any of those things? I didn't call attention to those. But if you think about shouldering a burden, see if you clench your jaw a little. And if you have a relief from that burden on your shoulders, if your mouth softens and opens, your breathing changes. Anyway, it's fun to think about these things and just feel how different each emotion is with the shoulders. Doctors, psychologists, counselors can look at us and look at our shoulders and have some idea of what emotions are going on inside. And so they're pretty important to play with, in addition for the physical things, but for the full range of emotional expression. So let's take our right hand and put it on the back of the chair. So come on and sit toward the front of your chair. And lean on the hand, or more specifically, think about getting support from the hand. And when you put your hand back there, you'll notice your shoulders probably want to turn a little bit. If you leave both shoulders to the front, it's kind of uncomfortable to get your hand there. But if you turn that shoulder and take it backward a little, it's more comfortable to put the hand on the back of the chair. Okay. So again, reminder, stay in your realm of comfortable movement. Okay. And then take your hand off the back of your chair and bring it back there again and feel, what do each of the 3 bones in your shoulder do when you do that? So when you take your hand back, your collarbone moves, your shoulder blade moves, and your upper arm moves a little.
Tricep moves.
Say it again.
Tricep moves.
I'm missing the first word.
Tricep.
The tricep, yeah, you feel the tricep muscle in the back has to engage a little bit because that's what pulls the shoulder in that direction. One of the muscles that does. Mm-hmm. Okay, and does your sternum move? Because remember, that's the only place your shoulder is attached to your skeleton directly. So it has to rotate a little bit in order to get the hand back there. Just keep doing this movement and see if so you're reaching back to touch the back of the chair. Do your sit bones move? Does one, it's like a funny little angle thing that goes on in there. One, it's not quite a sliding forward in the chair, but it moves a little forward. And your knees might move, your feet might grab the floor. So do this motion, keep doing it rather than doing it and staying there. Because each time you do it, you might sense something different. Does your breath go to a particular spot in your lungs when you reach back there? Is it like easier to get the air into one part of you? And be sure as you're doing this that the other shoulder comes a little forward. So think about bringing your other shoulder forward to bring this one backward. Okay. And then settle with your hand resting on the back. And not leaning, so not a lot of pressure, but just touching the chair. Okay. And let's begin to look down. So remember, as we look down using our whole long stick of the spine, you pull your belly in and you drop your sternum a little. You can take your hand and gently just touch your sternum and invite it to sink. And your belly goes in. You go to the back of your sit bones as you look down. And then to look up, you roll forward on your sit bones, you push your belly out, you open your chest a little, and then check out the ceiling. Anybody living up there today? And then go back and forth. You pull the belly in, letting all the ribs in the front of yourself contract a little bit, and look down. And then you arch and look up. But your hand is still there on the back of your chair. Good. And then take your hand off your chair and rest for a moment. And see if there's some sensation difference in your left and right shoulders. If you look at yourself in the Zoom window, is one shoulder higher than the other? Does one shoulder feel longer distance to your ear? And put that right hand back on the back of your chair, just comfortably resting there, using your body to get there. And begin to shift your weight a little bit to the right. So take your shoulders to the right, your belly to the right, so that your left sit bone comes up off the chair a little bit, or it lightens. So still have your right hand behind you on the chair, if that's comfortable, as you shift your weight to the right. And you could take your left hand and slide it under your sit bone, your left sit bone. So your left hand is under your sit bone, and you use your hand to help you feel how you can lift that left sit bone up just a little bit to get your weight to go over to the right. Good. And rest. Take your arm back to the front. See if it's changing sensation in the shoulder area. And then put that right arm back on the chair, letting your shoulders turn so it's comfortable to be there. And shift your weight up onto that sit bone, to your right sit bone, and go a little bit forward and backward over the sit bone. Just your whole body straight, your spine as that stick to go forward and back. Okay. And begin now, so you could go a little left and right over that sit bone. Begin to see if you can make a little circle. So your weight is circling your right sit bone while your right shoulder is fixed because your hand is on the chair. And then try and go the other way. Okay, and rest for a moment. Rest and look for sensation differences left and right in your body. Which sit bone are you sitting more on? You might even feel different one foot from the other, or one knee might feel higher or lower. If you close your eyes, The sensations are clearer. And go ahead and stand up. And as you're standing, which shoulder would it feel nicer to have somebody come and rest their head on? Which feels more open to having that connection? Which one feels like it would bear a burden easier? Which shoulder would you put to the wheel to do something difficult? Which way would you give somebody a cold shoulder? Would it be your right shoulder or your left that you would give them the cold shoulder? Which one feels more or less hunched? And as you stand up there, is your weight more on your right foot or your left foot? And go for a little walk. And as you walk, notice how your shoulders participate in the walk. And if standing and walking is difficult for you, you can stay in your chair and imagine walking. Kind of make the little motions with your sit bones in the chair as if you were walking. And anybody notice any difference in their arm swing as they're walking left and right? And then before you sit down, turn, and is it easier to turn to the right or to turn to the left?
To the right.
Yeah. Okay, and come and sit down. I like this lesson because it's so easy to do on your own at home that you can just come to the front of your chair, if a shoulder's bugging you, put it back there and make a little circle around your sit bone. Let's do it one more time on the right. So your hand is on the chair. You're making a circle around that sit bone in one direction. And then try and go the other direction. And feel how really all of your body is necessary in order to do this little motion. And now let's try doing some of the motions that we talked about at the beginning with the right arm. Bring your arm up as if you're going to brush your hair and see if your sit bone, your chest, and your belly participate a little more. Again, stay in the realm of comfort. Don't feel like you have to do the whole thing. And there's something about if you push your belly out like we were doing on the chair, see if that makes it easier. Okay? Or try pulling your belly in. And does that make it easier? Or is there some timing to it? I'm just playing with this. Like if you pull your belly in as you reach your hand up to your head, and then once your hand is there, push your belly forward and see if that allows the hand to go back. That there's the going from being rounded to being arched, lets that arm lift up a little. And rest. And some of the other things we talked about are keeping the shoulders back. If you think of that, okay, I want to take my shoulders back, does one go back a little easier than the other? Or is it just naturally back a little? That sense of the fabric, if you divided this fabric in half, left and right, does it feel different on the left and the right, front and back? How about reaching something high? When you reach something high, what if your weight goes over to that right sit bone like you were just doing? So start by putting your weight on the right sit bone or as you put your weight on the sit bone, reach. See if that helps it.
Yes.
Now clamp your bottom firmly in the chair as if you had a bottom that wasn't meant to move, and just kind of be solid on the chair and gently try to reach. And it's like, oh, just doesn't feel so good. And then let your bottom be alive and let your lifting up the other hip joint be what pushes you up. So Carol, this is the first time you're probably hearing me talk about this idea of a live bottom. But the idea is that if all of our movements come from our pelvis, especially the movements in the shoulders, they're going to be more comfortable. So the sit bones underneath you, the bottom of your pelvis that's in the chair, that's where you can move to initiate the reaching. It's almost like your right sit bone grabs the chair and it pulls you over onto that side to reach. So if you think of your sit bone grabbing the chair and pulling you over there. Okay. Yeah. Good. All righty. So close your eyes for a moment. Really intensify the sensations of difference between your left and your right. Think of 5 things that feel different in your body. Does your jaw feel different? Your eyes feel different left and right? When you breathe in, is there a softness in one side of you that receives the air better than the other? And do you feel more supported on your right side or your left side? Is it easier to imagine bearing a burden on your shoulder on the right or the left? And if you imagine that there's a weight on your shoulder, you have a big box on there, something, a box full of dishes or something heavy, you feel that right into your right sit bone. That there's a way that you can sit, that weight goes just in a nice straight line down into the chair. Whereas if you think of that box on your left shoulder, it might not be such a clear, visualizing the force might be a little harder. And which shoulder feels like there's a little bit of relief in this shoulder? So I think it's time to even ourselves out a bit. So let's put the left hand on the chair, and do this many times, putting the left hand on the back of the chair and bringing it forward. Noticing, what does your collarbone do? You can feel it with your right hand. How your collarbone has to move in space to get your hand to comfortably go back to the chair. And how your shoulder blade, what's your shoulder blade doing back there? Does it go closer to your spine or come away from your spine?
Closer.
Does it go up a little or down a little?
Up. Closer or not?
It's interesting. I'm just playing with that. I'm curious, how many people does their shoulder blade go closer and up?
It's me.
Okay. And how many people does it go closer and down? I'm seeing some people that it looks like that happens. Do a little experimenting. Sometimes try and go closer and up a little. See what that feels like. Does that make you want to look up, or does it make you want to look down a little when it goes closer and up?
A little.
And then see what it's like if you make it go closer and down a little. There are many things that are possible, and it depends on what our ribs are doing underneath. To go closer and up, the ribs do one thing, and to go closer and down, the ribs do something else. Rest for a moment. And then do that motion again of reaching back for the chair. And this time notice your sternum. You can tap it a few times to go, hello sternum, just to feel how the sternum has to rotate. And what does your spine do in order for your sternum to turn to the left? What direction is the back of your spine going as you're reaching back there? If the back of your spine had eyeballs, what would it be looking at? So our shoulders really depend on this movement of the sternum and the spine. And what are your ribs doing? If you visualize that whole cage of your ribs from behind you around to your sides to your front, is your rib cage turning a little bit in order to let your hand reach back here? You could imagine somebody put their hands on your side and they turn you a little bit to get your shoulder to go backward. Like if you were dancing in a closed ballroom position, they turn your body and that takes your hand backward. And then settle with your hand back on the chair. Your left hand on the back of your chair. And some of you, it's hard to tell from in Zoom, but make sure you're up at the front of your chair so there's some room behind you on the chair. So scoot your bottom forward, otherwise things get all bunched up. That way there's room for your elbow to be free behind you when your left hand is there. And in that twisted position, begin to push your belly forward, open your chest and look up. You kind of come forward a little when you look up. You might be looking up to the left a little. What does that upper left corner of your room look like? And then to look down, pull your belly in, let your arm and elbow be soft, and look down. It's as if somebody is pulling on your belt loop behind you, but they're not pulling on the middle belt loop. They're pulling one over to the right. That part of you pushes out to look down.
Yes.
And then push your belly forward, aiming your belly and your sternum over your left knee a little bit. And go back and forth like that. So you go down and look down. And then you come up and look up. And your arm and shoulder are soft. You don't have to have any weight on that back arm, but just a little bit of connection to the chair. And then bring your arm back in front of you and rest. And see if your sitting posture is a little different than usual. You might find yourself a little bit more forward over yourself. And see if that left shoulder is changing the distance from your ear to your shoulder. Your awareness of that shoulder, of you can trace in your mind's eye, where is my left collarbone? It's like your eyes do a little zigzag across the collarbone. And then where is that shoulder blade, that left shoulder blade behind me? There's one line that's kind of parallel to the top of your shoulder, one that's kind of parallel to your spine, and then a diagonal on the outside. So with your mind's eye, go around your shoulder blade on the left. Do you ever do when you were little with a friend, draw a shape on their leg or on their back and then they have to guess what the shape is? So imagine that somebody is drawing that triangle around your shoulder blade, that you can feel the pressure of their hand. You know, maybe you're at the beach. That's when we used to do it. I grew up on near the beach in New York. And okay. So now bring your hand back behind you, your left hand touching the chair. And begin to shift your weight a little bit further left and back. So you go a little left of your left sit bone. See if you can feel in the sit bone when you kind of go over the edge of it, because it's got a little bit of an edge to it when you go to the left. And try and only go so far to the right of the sit bone as you go to the left of it. You don't have to go any further. So you're really staying on that sit bone. Good, let that go. Bring your hand back. Take your right hand for a moment, slide it on the outside of your back pocket, or if you had a back pocket where the back pocket would be, slide it under until your fingertips are under your right sit bone. Put your left hand back on the chair and lift your right sit bone a little. You can use your hand to help lift it. Just feel how it can lighten on the chair. And kind of when it lightens, it goes away from your hand. You can't feel the sit bone as clearly. It's like it just lifts off a little. Good. Rest. Put your left hand back on the chair. Shift your weight so it's all on your left sit bone. And move your weight a little forwards and backwards. And there's two ways to do this. The straight stick of your spine, so your head goes forward and your head goes backward. Or the pulling your belly in and pushing your belly out a little while you're on that sit bone. And then begin to make a little circle around the left sit bone. And see, is the sit bone right in the center of the circle? Or are you making a little bit of an ellipse or an oval? Only go so far to the right as you go to the left, only so far forward as you go backward. And then rest for a moment. Bring the hand back behind you. Do one or two more circles like you were just doing them. And then stop and go the other way. And where did you stop to reverse direction?
Top of the circle.
So go a couple times one way and a couple times the other way, seeing if you can start and switch direction in different places each time. It's like, who knew you had a habit for how you sit with your arm back on the chair and do circles around your sit bone and switch direction? But we do. We have like one place that is the most natural to do that. And rest for a moment. Close your eyes as you're resting. Sense what breathing is like now. What parts of you receive the air? Sense the length between your shoulder and your ear. And the sensation of the fabric in the front of yourself and back of yourself. And then let's combine these motions a little bit. So let's do one arm at a time. Put your left hand behind you. on the chair, which means turning your torso, your whole torso a little to the left. And now once make a circle around your left sit bone, and then we're going to come around and make a circle around the right sit bone. So it's like a figure 8 around one sit bone and the other. Make sense? Good, let that go. Try it on the other side. So put your right hand to the back of your chair and go around the figure 8 a few times. And rest. And then if it's comfortable, and only if it's comfortable, both arms behind you. Let's just take a moment to figure out how to get in that position. The further forward your bottom is, the easier it's going to be. So you want your sit bones right at the very edge of your chair. And you have to push your sternum forward. So maybe even before you try to bring your arms back there, think about pushing the sternum forward and squeezing the shoulder blades. And that's what allows the arms to go there. And you probably find it's easier to look at the ceiling doing that. So if this feels like a big stretch or a little uncomfortable, do not go further. But if this feels like, all right, I can be there, experiment with going a little left and right. So going onto your right sit bone or your left sit bone. And then experiment with pushing your belly a little further forward and pulling your belly in a little bit. Just seeing how much forward-backward range you can have with your arms back here. And then do a circle around each sit bone. It's a funny thing to do with this constraint of where the arms are. You have to find a little bit more in your chest and in your belly, moving forward and backward in space, moving left and right in space. And then rest. Rest and see what your sense of uprightness is. And how easy would it be to shoulder a burden? If you put that burden now on your left shoulder, can you feel it going right down into your left sit bone? Or if the bearing a burden makes me think of an ox with a harness on. If you had to pull forward into a harness because it was you who was harnessed to the wagon to pull it. It's your sense of, can you find a way for that force that's going through your shoulders to go right into your sit bones? Where on your sit bones do you get support to push forward? And see what it's like to shrug your shoulders. And to put your arm in that sleeve behind you. Might it be a little bit easier? That the more your torso turns, there's just that little bit of ease for your arm. Yeah, nice. And feel the fabric, the front of you and the back. A little bit more even. Let's try lifting an arm to the side, as if you wanted to reach up for something. We did it before with our right arm by putting our weight on the right sit bone. Now try it with your left arm by putting the weight on your left sit bone. And if you look up at what you're reaching toward, like if you want to get a glass out of the cupboard, you want your eyes to follow the arm and see if that makes it even easier to get the arm up there. Which side's easier for reaching up? And what are the ribs in your armpit doing on the side you're reaching up with? Okay. And get up, stand up for a moment, walk around a little bit, and see what your sense of your shoulders is as you're walking. You could try walking fast, like, I gotta pee, or walking slow. Do your shoulders do a little bit of this left and right thing? Or a little bit of an up and down thing as you're walking? And does your mood feel different when you let your shoulders swing a little? Walk for a minute holding your shoulders very still, as if there were heavy burdens on both shoulders. And feel what your mood does. Okay. And then walk, letting your shoulders swing a little. And come back to your chair and sit down. And sit forward like we've been doing. You can take your bottom and put it in the back of the chair, but let your upper body be in that more leaning into what's happening. And think for a minute about that thing that you've been procrastinating about, or that's on your bucket list, or that's your dream. And just see if it feels different to think about it. Does it feel a little easier, perhaps, to imagine what would be the first step that you would need to do in order to get that project dream happening? It's an interesting thing that what's going on in our bodies impacts our ability to do what we want to do. And sometimes it's easier to play with the shoulders than it is to change the emotions directly. So know that if you're having one of those procrastination moments, put a hand back on your chair, do some figure eights on your sit bones, and then see if it's a little easier to go do the dishes. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be heavy, deep, and real big stuff. It can be just the little stuff of, like, I really wanted to go outside for a walk today, or it'd be nice to clean up this space. All right. So any comments on today's lesson, things you're going away with? New thoughts and sensations with your shoulders? Carol.
I noticed on some of the movements, they were like so concentrated or so difficult that I almost felt nauseated by them or dizzy, just a strange sensation.
So that can happen when we're doing things that are very new in our body. And it often happens when we're doing lessons related to the eyes. But when it happens, and it may happen to anybody during it, because we all have different patterns in our body, it happens to different people in different lessons. Go slower, or do the movement just in your imagination, or take more rests. But if it's a sign your brain is saying, this is overwhelming me a little bit. It's like a neurologic overload.
Okay.
So know that you, it's not something that somebody else can see happening in you. So you have to know, which now I'm really glad you asked the question, to just slow yourself down in the lesson. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And if are you still feeling it?
No.
Okay. Good. Any other thoughts, feelings, noticings? Do you like your shoulders more now? When you think of phrases about shoulders, what are some positive shoulder phrases that come to mind? Colleen.
I felt when we were leaning forward, like the ladies on the front of ships, that stick out over the water. It was a really kind of a cool feeling, like surfing.
Yes, it is a surfing feeling, or you think back to movies, and I think of the Sophia Loren movies of that kind of alluring pose, you know, the looking over your shoulder and pushing your chest out. That's, or for me, the sense of broad shoulders, there's a lot of potency that lives in our shoulders, potency for action and relationship. Yeah, Barbara.
I'm definitely feeling more subdued and expansive, which is kind of got a disturbing feeling because it really opened up the chest. So it's a calm, but it's very, very subdued, but open. In a different.
And it sounds like there's something unfamiliar there for you, or like disturbing. Yeah. Our patterns happen in our chest because of our emotional habits, that when that changes, you're in a new place and there's new possibilities, and that's a little scary. And a lot of times you'll find, oh, not that, and then there's an opening for chess. As women, you know, you're growing up, you go through puberty, and these lumps appear on your chest, and then the boys start looking at them, and then you kind of pull back and hide. Is one response that people have. There's all sorts of stuff, all sorts of emotions in here. Now, what I love is that we're getting this moment to be in a new place and experience things in a new place, and that's where the possibilities of some of those dreams start coming up, and you can grab them a little easier because you're in a different spot. It's like one of the only ways I know of to change who we are, to become more of who we are, less stuck in the habits.
Well, breaking it down like this makes it so much easier. I mean, just the component parts of emotion to reach up to a shelf and grab something safely and grip it and bring it down. I mean, that's achieved. Doable but difficult proportions now.
Okay, so Moshe Feldenkrais, that quote that I have on my wall, that he said what he was trying to do is make the impossible possible, the possible easy, and the easy elegant. And so to go from the impossible to the possible but difficult is a major step on that way. And the more you do these classes, the more things move into the easier and easier realm of the motion. And knowing that it is as simple as learning how the body is supposed to move. You know, arms have to be supported in order to function. They're not this independent entity. If you clamp down your torso and just move your arms, really, you get yourself into all sorts of trouble. But how can the rest of you support that shoulder into doing what you're doing? Barbara, or you? Whoops, you're muted, Barbara.
Wanting to piggyback on what Gus said, John Argu has a line that I use a lot. If I'm intending to do something or get something or move, it's graceful, mindful, complete. That's what it kind of ties in with what we're talking about very much.
That's a lovely phrase. And the graceful is the result of mindful and complete. It's like it becomes graceful when the pattern in your brain is clear of this is what's needed to do this movement. That's when we, and grace happens when the movement is supported. So but the way our brains work, the human brain can think, I want to do it gracefully, and those other things come along. All right, on that note, go out into your life and have a graceful, mindful, and complete rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Irene.
Welcome.
Thank you, Irene. And one more thing, please, if everybody could please sign up for the Hope Conference, which is live tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. If you go to Eventbrite or to our website, we would love for you to register. It's going to be a great conference.
And sign up, even if you can't go tomorrow because you'll be able to watch it after you've registered.
Yeah, you don't have to watch it this weekend. You can watch it next week, next month. You'll just have all the content. So please just sign up. Thank you. Bye, Irene.
Bye.
Hi, Miriam.
Bye.